Cotton in large quantities was required in UK, and we had the cotton grown in the interiors of the country. So it had to be brought to the port. There were bullock carts that were getting it, but by the time it reached the port, it was soiled. It was in a very bad shape. So we needed a faster mode of communication to get it clean and send it fast to meet the demands. So, and railways were happening in a big way in the UK. So there were efforts in Bombay, Calcutta, Madras to build a railway line for a faster transport mode. But it was technically difficult for one to build a railway line in Bombay because it was islands, 7 different islands. So it had to be filled up together. So a plan was basically first built, chalked out to build a railway from the port of Bombay to the nearest city of Thane, which was the mainland of India. The planning began, the finances came down. It was supposed to be, the money was collected from the people in form of shares. So they didn't have funds that way. So the first line, when it actually came, it was from Bombay, Bori Bandar it was called, the extreme south end, to Thane city. It was a 21-mile railway line.
When you say people, you mean?
The shareholders were basically businessmen who were interested in bringing the cotton and who would profit from the business around the city.
These were Indian or British businessmen?
Indian, mostly Indian traders and businessmen, and half of them were British. Some people who were very keen to get the railways were also industrialists who were setting up mills, and because the city was growing in a big way, people were coming from all sides of the country. So it was the East India Company. They formed a board of directors. It went back to the parliament. It got passed as an act. It was called the Great Indian Peninsular Railway, which means the GIP railway. Signages of which are still around at station lying around. So the bill was passed in 1849. The first line came up in 1852. The trials happened. The first engines were pulled by people in wagons, and from Bhaikala the first train started, a test run sort of a thing. And there were people all around the place to look at how things are moving without any power. So 1852 the trial happened, and 1853 the first public run happened. The original Boripanda station was a bit far ahead from the existing VT station. At the place where the VT station is built today, there were structures. There was a pond where the people used to be hanged. But the British wanted a magnificent building to show their power to the Indians, and it was the first railway. They had to have a memorable monument for that railway line. The other thing was the GIP railways was in stiff competition with the BBCI railway, who were planning a big terminus for their station. So this had to be different. So they reclaimed a large amount of land. Platforms had to be expanded. That was another demand, because more and more trains were coming from across the country as the passenger traffic grew. So the existing Borivandar station by 1872 had become insufficient for the traffic. So they had to think of a bigger station. So they called, so the Bombay government and the railways drew a plan together to have this station, build this station. Lots of structures inside the building were open to public. Like they had a post office with the PR offices today, or the station masters and the motorman lobby was a huge waiting room for the people. So almost the entire building was open to public in a way.
When did this change?
The changes started coming, many came after independence, and the security thing killed most of the openness of the building, because now you have barricades everywhere. You can't enter the building. Even if you need to see the museum, you need to buy a ticket and go and see it, and then somebody will walk with you and show you. Because now, after the attack of 26th November, people are more wary about opening the building to public, and because you never know who will come, and because it's a important asset of the city, and it's the administrative headquarters of Central Railway, so it's the most protected building in a way. Because if somebody hijacks this building, there are 1800 trains, local trains that start from this station alone, plus 200 outstation trains. So it's a big responsibility also. So that is the key concern, that what will happen if the building is, and the general manager and all the top officers sit here. The entire control room is here, the towers, everything is here. So that is the key concern. And the fallout has been people are not able to view it. People who come to see the heritage of the building are turned away. They have to enter the building from the other end and buy a ticket and then just do a guided tour. Secondly, lots of offices which were empty rooms earlier have been converted into security offices, and the CCTVs are being hammered everywhere in the building, which has damaged the building in a big way. In fact, because with the CCTV comes the wiring, so you see all the wirings everywhere. So and these are stone pillars. You cannot hammer things into it. But they've hammered CCTV, about 500 CCTVs in the entire building, which is slowly weakening the structure. The latest thing which they did was they added the LED lamps. The building looks very good, but they've hammered around 1200 lamps inside the building with the wires, which is again eating the building in a slow. And people get happy to see the building in a big way, but you should not be hammering those lamps inside the building like this. Most of the conservation that is being done so far is in the railway files. Nobody's aware of what exactly has been done, because they just patch up small parts here and there, and because I see more damage being done even today than conservation by fixing lamps, and they glorify these things which are in a big way. But the real conservation is yet to happen. There are cracked pillars on the first floor of the building. The other day I went to the building, they were putting a red carpet on the staircase for the general manager to walk, and they were welding in the nails so that it stays in place. So which is like bad things which should not happen, because the spiral staircase is a unique feature of the building, of the city. In fact, there is a need to expand the tour to other parts of the building which are not covered in the tour, which is the original Stephen's kitchen, which is there. The other side of the second floor, the clock tower, where people are not taken. So these things people will like to see: the clock tower, the spiral staircase, the dome of the. There's a balcony which is near the dome. So people and a small tunnel goes there up there. So there are various places where people could still be taken with the security feature added.
As a Mumbaiker, do you feel deprived or denied at this point?
I have been, in a way, if I was not, because I have been a journalist, I had access to all places. I known those people also. But for a common man, yes, it is a problem, because they can't go unless they speak to some officer. They need some escort to go up there. They can't go individually. And for people who know it's more of a deprivation. Like, I can't go and see it, because I just need to see it in pictures. I stay in the same city, but I can't see it. When denied access to the building, you are being deprived of the history of the city, because many people in Bombay, when they say the local train, they curse it. Crowd, this, but then this is the railway which brought the railway network to the country. It has got saturated. We need to find other modes of transit. That's a different thing. But then, in the crowd and bustle of the rail, of this day-to-day running, we have lost the beauty of the history of the first train somewhere from Bombay to Thane. When you say Bombay to Thane, they've kept the first train running still. The first train had ran at 3:35 p.m. in the afternoon. So even today, they maintain the timetable in such a way that the first train still runs at the same time. But then these smaller facts of history are overlooked always, and then it's always the rush to reach somewhere, and the local train. So the local train has got lost into its own tangle.